Yes, welcoming your questions. So I hope you've been sending them in, and hopefully they'll pop up here in a minute. But I wanted to start with you, Adam, if I could. Where do you see financial services relative to other industries in terms of adoption of data and analytics to solve business problems? Are they in the curve, ahead of the curve, below?
Okay, if I'm honest, I would say 10 years ago, I would say financial services was at the front of the market. So for example, our business, we would do work with financial services companies when no other industry would even kind of want to talk to you. Woolworths didn't even have customer data 8 years ago, as an example. So I think financial services led the way, and that continued for a while. We would do work with financial services client and kind of think of that as the cutting edge, and then take that sort of stuff to other industries. And I really think that has changed. I think in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I really think that other industries have overtaken. I think they've got more data. There's a lot of people who have the ability to use that data. We're just seeing great examples from Facebook and Google, but there's loads of other companies that, Amazon, say for example, all these sorts of companies that are doing some awesome stuff. And I don't think financial service has as much data and scope to do it. So I think the financial service can now learn a lot from other industries, whereas beforehand it was the other way.
So what were the financial services industries doing well back then, and what did they stop doing?
I don't think it's that they stopped doing anything. I think back then, they understood data. I think financial services needed to understand data better than other industries because of risk. Often it was risk selection and stuff like that, but equally, they don't have the same opportunities to be engaging with customers every day, perhaps. So say, for example, a general insurance company, you're not engaging with a customer every day, whereas a Facebook and Google, we just saw the stats. I hate to think what that added up to for how much time people spend on Facebook every day. There's just constant interaction. So because of that, the sophistication of what some other industries can do with data and analytics has, it's exponentiated. And so as a result, I think there's a lot we can learn from those industries.
A question for both Colin and Oliver. Can technology actually remove or somehow deal with what's been a traditional part of the financial services, which is the need for a face-to-face relationship, the need for a very personal relationship? We're talking about people's livelihoods, their money, their insurance, the lot. Can technology ever genuinely meet that and answer that and replace it? What do you think?
So I think there's 2 parts to that. So I think there will always be a need for human interaction of some description, or I hope there is in my lifetime. There are certainly things that you can take out of that. So sort of useless processing and that sort of thing is just unnecessary. Asking me to go into a branch to go and sign a document is a bit pointless. Things like robo-advice and the ability to be able to surface the right information, the right message, right time, etc. I think that will continue to evolve. I don't honestly think, and I'm probably going to offend someone here, I don't think the number of bank branches needs to stay the same. Fundamentally, the number of people going to them is declining all the time. So I think people are voting with their feet. And then equally, as Ollie was saying, you can do sort of video conferencing now. You can, for the last 10 years, be able to do Skype. It's something that the banks don't seem to have really embraced, or insurance companies, etc. So I think there's a lot that could be done with the existing technology. I think it will continue to evolve. I think there will always be the person buying their first house who want to speak to their dad, or they want to speak to someone to give them a bit of a nudge to kind of take the next step.
It depends on brand, though, doesn't it? We know that some brands evolve to the extent where the trust and the faith in it is enormous. It's feasible that it could evolve to that level.
I just think it answers almost the first question as well. It's always a risk-based conversation with banks, and typically they are risk-averse. So the earlier question about data and CRM, we have ways in which you can now connect customer data into Facebook and the same with Google and other platforms, but the idea of that to a lot of organisations, and especially to banks, is kind of madness. But it's the way the world's going, right? It's kind of that connectivity and using all of the data available to us to get to the right decision, which in the end is business value for that client. It's something they're starting to get over. I think now it's sort of, it's that risk and reward type thing, and they're now seeing the rewards because the traditional channels aren't delivering. They kind of need to move that way. So I think necessity will we'll move them that way. In terms of branches, then I think we all agree that you still want that human interaction. It's about connecting people with people, albeit we have just launched bots in Messenger. But again, we wouldn't encourage all communications to be taken by some artificial intelligence or a responsive message. So I still believe it will have a place. It's just how that exists will change.
From a personal perspective, and someone who absolutely loves the, I know there's CBA reps in the room, the Commonwealth banking app on my phone, which is just absolutely delicious. It's so beautifully designed. It's a pleasure to use. I'm paying bills and transferring just because I love the pleasure of using that totally well-designed app. But what I want is basically where it meets, say, for example, one of the best online shopping sites that I use, which has great live chat.
Yep.
And so what I want is halfway through, I want the live chat option, so that person who was working in the branch still has a job, but they're in live chat. And they say, Virginia, anything I can help you with? Thank God you popped up. Yes, da-da-da-da-da. And then we solve it that way, but I'm still on my app. I mean, that would be, to me, seem the easiest merging of old and new technology. So face to face with this thing.
No, I agree with you, Virginia, and I think that ability to kind of go across all these different experiences is what people are expecting. They, if like New South Wales government with Service NSW can give you a driving license and things like that online, why can't I, do all these other things? And integrating, say, WhatsApp into that experience, why not? I use WhatsApp to connect with my friends. Why can't I connect with my local banker? If they want to be increasingly relevant, they're going to have to do it on my terms, not theirs.
Yeah. I've got a question here from the audience. It's probably one for you, I think, Adam. Will data analytics personalisation of very precise risk for each life lead to the end of insurance? Pretty much the exact premium for exact risk claim.
Thank you.
You don't have to answer that.
Oh, look,
We should have subbed it on the way through.
No, that's okay. I think it's a fair question. Look, I'm not an aficionado on life insurance, but I think, like, if you look at general insurance, why don't I talk a little bit about that? I think you've started to see that happen increasingly in general insurance, where you started to create uninsurable risks. So as general insurers became more sophisticated about rating individual properties, it meant that properties in flood-prone areas became close to uninsurable because the true premiums were so high. But you could understand, because the incumbent players are under threat from challenger brands who come in and just start picking the eye out of that cross-subsidisation. So I think we've seen some of that in general insurance. In life insurance, I thought you were all just rated by gender and smoking status at the moment, so I would have thought there's a fair way to go until we get that far. But I don't know, I think there's a real ethical question around the information that's available and to what extent it gets shared with the life insurer. There was an example before that was in one of the presentations I thought was worth talking about. Every time I always saw these things about doing a genetic test and whether you'd want that done to kind of see what you could die of, I remember thinking, I just don't think I'd want it done. And then I spent some time talking with a health insurer in South Africa, and the way they described it was, if you could buy a product that actually only showed you the things that you could go and fix, would you be interested in that? And then that was the light bulb moment. I thought, well, then this sort of profiling would become valuable to me as a consumer, because if there are things that I can address, great. If I've got something that I can't address, and then I don't want to know about it, that's a bit scary to me. But I know I started drifting off the topic because I didn't like the question. So.
Sorry, I'll drag you back. But to continue your point there, I mean, it's and to pick up the slide that we had about genetic testing, it becomes incredibly complex for the consumer when they find this stuff out, and then the insurance company, of course, can get access to that and go, hang on a minute. You have potentially down the line all these problems. I'm sorry, you're uninsurable, or your premium is now this.
I was just thinking the same thing when you were talking about it. There is a level, I think, of how far we'll go in terms of what information we'll make available for targeting.
That's right.
There are certain things that we don't make available for targeting.
But that'll become, once you've had that test, eventually it will become, in a sense, mandatory and discoverable.
I think there's some of the habits you talk about in health insurance, right? So if, for example, we may be leveraging Quantium data to understand who's buying sugary soft drinks because they've used analytics to stock their shelves with loads of soft drinks, like, you could argue that if we don't want to target those people. Yeah. So in essence, they'll be excluded from certain offers or products or services based on their lifestyle or based on what they're buying. So I think that's relatively real. In terms of results of tests, that would probably be a little bit unfair.
I think there's always ethical questions that businesses have to deal with as to where you draw the line, and I don't think this is any different. Like, just because you have the ability to do something doesn't mean you should. And I think it's important to focus as much energy on all the things you can do that are nothing to do with whether you start getting into individual risk selection. There's a lot of things that insurance companies could be using data to do better, or analytics in the business. We've seen some examples here, but there are equally other things that you could be using data for evil, and as a business you need to make sure you don't.
Yep.
So I don't think that's any different to other parts of a business where you've got those opportunities.
Ollie, a question here. Facebook has such rich lifestyle data already. Why aren't you already the biggest global insurer?
I saw that one out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah. Were you preparing an answer?
It goes back to Colin's earlier point. You know, when we first started the company, Mark, should have got in there earlier.
Yeah, but he's got
Mark
shares,
and
so
I.
he's okay.
Mark and I.
We go way back.
You know, he's only 7 years younger than me, so you know, I was kind of finishing primary school when he was starting. We built a platform. Lots of people started using it. We made it better. More people started using it, and so on and so forth. And then we thought, okay, we probably need to think about making some money. Where do you go to make some money? And for us, media was the place where we felt was the easiest opportunity to do that. You know, people ask about, are you going to become a bank? You know, it's no secret that in the US you can send people money in Messenger. So if, you know, we had a big night out and I lent you $100, you could just go, Ollie in Messenger, and send me the information. The answer I always get, like, I can't say categorically we'll never become an insurer or we'll never become a bank, but I think there are easier and less rigorously governed industries. Not saying we're trying to skirt the rules or go do some dodgy back dealing, but I think there are probably easier opportunities than the financial services opportunity.
You don't need the stress, is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
We'd rather partner with than recreate.
Colin, do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you think about which industries you want to lean into, okay, you know, financial services, there's very large margins, but there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of people in there. And
These guys aren't stressed. You're not stressed in this industry, are you? Like, they love it.
But they're only stressed about thinking about their drinks after this.
I know.
I just think that those, in all honesty, there are so many exciting things that you can do with data and Facebook that trying to sort of go in and take existing industries on would be a harder job than going and creating a new segment.
Question here. I think for all three of you, it seems big data is typically used by larger organisations who can afford it. How can the scope of big data and its insights be reached by small businesses to help them compete with the bigger players? We'll start with you.
Okay, I can start. That's all right. Look, I think it's easy to think that because the examples we give here are big business, but actually I think it's probably these guys to the side, well, Mark and the guys, obviously. But if you think about small business, I think things like Facebook and Google have opened up advertising to small business. So beforehand, it would be too expensive to advertise on TV because it costs a lot of money to produce an ad, put an ad on TV, whereas it's very easy for a small business to run a Facebook campaign or to sponsor keywords on Google. So I think that's an example of small business actually being able to use data to do that intelligently because these guys make that targeting just naturally part of their business. So that's one example. I gave an example before of work we were doing with NAB where they would share reports with their SMEs, and I think most banks are now either doing that or in the process of kind of moving towards that. So I think there are lots of different ways that small business can benefit from data without necessarily having to be the ones kind of driving the big projects or the big innovation.
I think Adam's answered it perfectly. So if we look at, you know, the numbers of advertisers on our platform, you know, the top 1,000 get people like me around the world helping them do stuff. But if we look at the kind of the bottom of the pyramid, that's equally as valuable, the sum of those parts. I'm probably sure it's similar with you guys at Google, that making it easy for every single business to access this level of information that is available to everybody else. I think, you know, we talk about democratizing advertising, and I think that's true for both companies, that historically, you couldn't buy a TV ad, maybe in regional WA or something where the inventory's maybe a bit cheaper. But yeah, we believe it's open for everybody. And when we build our tools, we build them for everybody at Mine, not just the most sophisticated, but the most unsophisticated way as well. So arguably, Joe's Plumbing down the road could jump on, have a Facebook page, target the people in his area about his service, invest. Yes, you'd have to invest, but as you would do handing out leaflets or getting the yellow pages. And we believe we're going to be targeted and help him measure the results more effectively.
And I'll give you 2 free tools. So one is Google Analytics. It's free. You can download it and put it on your website if you've got one, and see who's coming there, and then analyze who's coming there. And it'll give you all the tools to do that. Second one is Google Trends for marketers. You can work out flu trend outbreaks and all the rest of it. You can work out the next box office hit by just seeing what's trending, and you can go in and look at that. And if it's your business and you're like, plumbing, and you're looking in a particular suburb, it'll tell you that too. And if you suddenly see a spike, you can go after it. And those things are all free and available to anyone in this room.
And finally, our final question is actually a little bit of career advice. Adam, what advice would you give an actuary wanting to move into the data analytics field? We won't ask that person to identify themselves in the room.
Sell your business to Woolies.
Big man?
Sell your business to Woolies.
What advice would I give? Look, there's a bunch of things. I don't think the only people that call it the data analytics field would be us in the room, right? It's not a field. I think just thinking a little bit differently and not, I think everyone in the room, or kind of every actuary, would have the right skills to do, to work in an industry. And really at the moment, if you're working in financial services, you're basically applying it in a single industry. And I think all of those techniques can be used in another industry. I think the examples I gave were pretty simple kind of analytics things. They weren't particularly challenging. And I think it's just one of those things, everyone in the room probably, not everyone, but whoever asks the question, people ask those sorts of questions, underestimate just how much we all know that other people may not know. Just to be familiar with the idea that the first thing you need to do is clean up the data before you do anything. We just take that for granted. That is not something to be taken for granted. We did some work the other day that some of the guys in our company were saying, oh, this is nothing, it was just so easy, blah, blah. And we're only, well, I shouldn't actually say, but we're about to be the second company in the world that's been signed up to do this type of work, this certain measurement work. Yeah, we take it for granted it's so simple because as an actuary, the analysis is very simple, yet this was not something that's been kind of simply done around the place. So I think, I quite passionately believe that the actuarial kind of industry or profession has the skill sets and has the skill sets in a very deep way. Just needs to be kind of not go too far down the path of just applying it in a single industry. So I don't know if it answers the question, but the other thing I would do is kind of start getting familiar with different, it's almost like as part of CPD, actually just look at other ways of doing stuff. So maybe start learning about machine learning and stuff like this, because otherwise I do fear that things like our education are just pushing people down an old school path. And that, we still hire actuaries, but not because of what they learn, just because we think the course naturally selects smart people, and then we retrain them. I don't want to be, well, I'm sorry, but that's what we do. We hire them because they're smart people, and then we train them in different techniques, and that's kind of a bit sad when you're kind of describing like that. But equally, there aren't other courses that are great at either. But I think that's the challenge for people in this room, and it's a challenge for our existing team as well. Like I said in my presentation, how do they reskill? So.
It's been a great conversation, and thank you for your questions. Please thank our panellists this afternoon, Colin and Adam and Oliver.